Hi, I'm Rachel McLeod, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and emotional wellness coach. And today I'm going to talk to you about why gratitude practices do not resolve or get rid of symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, how they can even make them worse. And also, I really want to talk with you about how to really get your natural, authentic, and abundant gratitude to flow within you, through you, and out into your life, because that really is important. And I want to talk about this because many of you already know this doesn't work. Um, and you might be feeling crazy, like, why is it not working for them? Why is it working for them and not for me? And you keep trying, but you're not getting the results. You're not feeling better. You're feeling worse. I want to validate you that gratitude is not what resolves symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. And for those of you who are like, what? Yes, it does. I'm having a great time. I want to talk about why you might be having a good time and how to increase your good time with gratitude. If you understand this from a brain function perspective, I think you're going to really have a great time with this. So that's what we're going to do today. Um, let me first say that I love gratitude practices. I think they're wonderful. But let's talk about a couple of them, right? So we've got name 20 things, 10 things that you're grateful about. And maybe you do that upon awakening or at night, or maybe you are just going to start saying thank you more. You're just going to be grateful, thankful. There's lots of ideas about using just emotionalizing gratitude. Just feel it, just generate the feeling, whip it together inside and just start feeling it and feel it as much as you can. And people go to great lengths to do that. I have been in a business course where this is one of the foundational premises and one of the things to do. And I've been stewing on that, on brain function wise. And in one way, it's brilliant, and one way, it really can be harmful if you don't understand this one very small brain function. And um, I do think that that gratitude is great. So please hear me say that. And it doesn't resolve symptoms. And why it doesn't is because symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress are brain function challenges that gratitude, another emotion, is not going to fix. And so we need to fix that problem. And that's a brain function problem. The brain has encountered, your system has encountered something in your life. Maybe it was something in your past, maybe it's something in your present, maybe it's something you're thinking about in the future. And your brain is not functioning well in relation to that thing, right? And so the thing is coming into your life right here, and your brain is saying, "Ah!" Right? And now you've got symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress. Maybe you're falling asleep. Maybe you're exhausted. Every time you come near this thing, you're exhausted, or maybe your mind is racing. Maybe you start having panic attacks. Maybe you have difficulty concentrating. Maybe you just have a low, depressed mood. Maybe you're angry. Maybe when you come around this thing, you start fighting and you start arguing and you start sabotaging, you start withdrawing, you start foaming at the mouth, not foaming at the mouth, like maybe you do start foaming at the mouth. I mean, I don't know. I'm not here to judge, right? But maybe you start fawning all over people. That's what I was going with, where you just start doing everything to please people, right? And in this business course I was in, they teach you to have conversations with potential clients, and they teach you to do this. And when people come closest, their brains just do this, and then they find themselves fawning, fighting, becoming defensive, acting like people they don't know they are. Been there, done that. That's a brain function thing. That is not a gratitude issue. That is not a mindset issue. And if we can resolve the brain function here, then we can really come together with these things that used to do this to our brain. And now our brain is like, oh, hi, how you doing? Problem that used to drive me absolutely nuts, make me act a whole fool. Um, and now the brain can function well around that. And what that means is that the brain has been able to go through its process of making a function for this thing. Oh, when we get over there and we see that thing again, what we're going to do is this, this, and this. Okay. And that the whole brain is like, yeah, okay, we're going to do that. Now, and so when you come back to that thing, the brain runs its new program. But prior to that, you have this thing that your brain's like, I don't know what we're going to do. I think we're going to die. I'm sure we're going to die. We're not going to be okay. It's not run, fight, flight, freeze, faint, whatever we got to do, survive, right? That means the brain has not made it through its process yet. And what happens in functioning brains, we run into that stuff all the time, right? Imagine you're tribal and you're out there and you find this new cactus you've never seen before, and you're like, ah, and you run off. But when you come back, you're thinking about it, you're like, you know what? I haven't seen that cactus before, but I bet you if I go talk to this tribe over there, maybe they've seen it before. Maybe I can get some answers and I don't have to run screaming and tell my whole tribe to stay away from that whole entire area, right? And so the brain begins to work out things, and it starts to gather resources and gather, it's trying to gather a way of being around this thing, in this case the cactus, right? And so once it has that thing, now everybody's fine with it. Maybe that cactus is absolutely poisonous and deadly, but everyone's cool around because they know how to work with it, right? And so symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress are evidence that the brain does not have a way of dealing with, working with, or coping with, or strategizing around something. Now, that might be things you might be frustrated about that because you're like, they just looked at me and I just went into a whole thing. I just went into a whole panic attack, or I just touched this thing on my shoulder over here and I went into a whole panic attack, right? Well, your brain doesn't have a program for that. It thinks it's going to die still, right? And we have to, if we want the symptoms to stop, we have to help our brain create a way of being around that thing. And the brain has a specific process for that. And what it actually begins with is the emotion in it, right? The I'm terrified, and the body's feeling of that, right? The feeling in your stomach, maybe that pit in your stomach. The brain needs to move all of that through to the front of the brain. Now, I will tell you what I have found is your survival system, as brilliant as it is set up to not let danger through into your system or through the process of healing and resolving and being making a new way for this. So even though you have something that needs to move through the healing pathways, your survival system is like, we're not going to live, block it and throw it out. Don't let it through. And it will do that regardless if that thing is joy and gratitude. I don't know what that is. I've never seen that before. Get that out of here. Right? That's a real thing. And some brains, I was just doing a session on this where it was not safe to feel gratitude. The brain has no way of being around that because it was not wired in early childhood. So we have to do that work. If we tell this person to go be grateful 10 times, we are telling them, go face a lion that's going to eat you, as far as their brain is concerned. That is a lot of stress. It's a lot of anxiety, and that's a lot of exposure therapy, which I hate. If you've seen any of my videos on that, I hate exposure therapy. I love it when you add in this one little brain piece function. Then I'm singing a whole nother song for you. Right. And again, gratitude, same thing. I love gratitude process, but I am going to feel like if someone gives that client of mine a gratitude practice exercise, because what it's doing to their brain function is harming them. Right? But you add in this one little brain function support, and now I'm like, let's do this gratitude thing. I'm singing a whole new song. We it's like making a kid get on a bike that they're terrified with, and you're like, no, you're fine, you'll be fine. The kid's saying, I'm not okay, I don't feel safe. And you're like, no, just get on the bike anyway. Forget about the fact that your entire system is telling you that this is going to be very dangerous. Forget about that. Just get on. No, it does not have to be like that. That is traumatizing. And we do that to ourselves all the time, and we don't know that we're doing that. Many times because we were trained like that as kids. No, just push it to the side and keep moving. Even though, like, we could just take a little extra time and get the whole system on board, and then we're just moving forward. But no, if you do this, you create trauma, and then you have to spend months in a therapist's office, if not years, because it does not save extra time. And so doing gratitude in that way can really, really be harmful. But I totally what I enjoyed that, but I was over here doing this thing. I want to keep doing that thing. What was that thing? Um, we were talking about, oh, I think I'm just gonna have to keep moving and hopefully it'll come back. Okay. Oh, we were talking about making a new way of being. And so because the survival system is the one that will block the healing process, that's the one that we really must spend our time working with. And because that part of the brain is electrical, you can really engage that part very, very quickly and get it to allow healing to happen. And so if you do that, it will allow that the emotional content, the pieces, the material, the subconscious material, the somatic material, the beliefs, all the things, it will allow all that stuff through if you can influence it, if you can engage it, if you can talk to it about healing and letting healing happen. Now, unfortunately, the survival part of the brain is not a thinking, reasoning, or logicking center, so you cannot reason, think, or talk and logic with it. And it's not a talking center. That's not what it does. And so most of talk therapy is not effective for this because it does not engage the survival system in the healing. And it is the one that will decide whether healing will happen or not. And so when you're working with that part of the brain, you want to speak to it in its native language. It's how you will get the fastest results. And that's why I like interventions like emotional freedom techniques, thought field therapy, energy medicine, and EMDR. Those are the four I specialize in. There are more. These are the ones I rely on. If I found another one that impressed me and did better than these or as good as in a different way, I would grab them up too. And you will be hearing me say, and then there's this one, right? I am not, I really just am looking for how to help the brain function. That is really my criteria. And it needs to be fast because brains are fast. And that's how you know that you found the right match for the brain, is that it's moving. All of a sudden, there's healing happening. So when you use those, the survival system will allow this stuff to come through, including gratitude and joy, all the positive emotions as well that it thinks is dangerous because we haven't seen those before. Or remember that last time that person was really joyful and then whammo, this happened. And remember how awful that was? I know it's because of the joy. If you just aren't joyful, that stuff doesn't happen, right? Brains are not logic. That survival system is not logical. It's just mapping and it's just looking for patterns. And it will find something and it's like, this is the reason. And it's not the reason. And that reason it found is now going to create a lot of problems, right? And so we want to influence it to take that we want to take that reason out of its hand and move it through the healing process and get it into the front of the brain where it will create new ways of being around that thing. And then it'll write a new program for your survival system, and the survival system will be like, oh, okay, all right, okay, I'm not going to freak out about that anymore. It's not that, I get it, it's not that thing, right? But that's not done. You cannot you can't you can't do that before the subconscious mind, before the survival system is ready. You can't influence it by reasoning with it. It has a process that it goes through. And if you follow that process, you will get results. This is how I am able to help people take apart and take down their anxiety, depression, and trauma disorder or disorders. Sometimes people have multiple of them in 2 to 6 months instead of 2 to 6 years. I'm using this one principle, this one brain function challenge. And I am working that part over and over and over again, over and over and over again. And it's very simple. It's not confusing. It's just one thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And because if we can help your brain function, it will do what it's supposed to do. It will do all the healing work it can do. It will do all the healing work it wants to do. And that's what I see my job as, is help your brain do all the work it wants to do all the brain work it needs to do. And your brain is telling you constantly. And that's what's really interesting about this, is that most people don't know and that their brain is telling them constantly what it wants to work on. And so when I am listening to them, I'm hearing their brain right away, right? Because this is what I do. When I started this stuff, I didn't hear my brain either. I didn't know what it was saying. Now I'm like, oh. And if you don't listen, it just gets louder and louder and more creative to get you to listen. And then you have pain showing up in your body. You have challenges in dysfunction and disorder in your relationships, in your living environment, in all the things that you're doing, right? So it's really valuable to listen to your brain and help it do the work it wants to do. And this is something you can do for yourself. You actually don't need a therapist to help you with this because it's one thing, it's very small. But it must be done over and over and over and over again. It's nice to have a therapist help you because then you get that guidance. It's nice to have a coach like myself help you because then, we can point that stuff out to you and help you to get that through your brain's healing process. But it's something that is it, I believe one day that, and if it's up to me, we will be doing this work at the breakfast tables with our children. That we will be doing trauma work right there because it is that simple. It is that small. It is that easy to be doing to work with our brains powerfully. We just don't have the knowledge yet, but we can get it. Okay. And I'm totally off track. So let me jump back on track here. Um, Symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress are because there's a challenge somewhere. It can be in the body, it can be in the nervous system, it can be in the survival system. Those kind of things are the same thing. Subconscious, and it can be in your conscious mind as well. Or that's really, those are the places I'm looking. And when we are using these interventions, the four that I talked about, we're allowing the subconscious mind to move to the side and let things happen, right? And then what's going to happen is we really want to look to see who's got the problem. Is it in the body? I like to start with the body because if those symptoms resolve from the body, they will usually resolve from everywhere else very quickly, right? So, and then next, I want to see what the subconscious mind's got going on and what's it trying to say. What stories does it want to tell? What's coming out there? What pictures does it want to draw um, mentally? You know, so, but the deal is that each part of you needs to move this symptom of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress through the process. Okay. And once that happens, you resolve the subconscious issue because the subconscious mind cannot resolve symptoms. That's not its function. It doesn't do that. The same way that the small intestine cannot shoot out food from it, out from your stomach. It cannot do that. It has to send the material, the food that it doesn't want anymore, that it's like, we don't need this. It has to send it to the part of the body that can release that. The subconscious mind is the same way. It can't release it. It has to send the stuff to the part of the body that can release it, which is the thinking center. And and that's really the prefrontal cortex. That's where things can be released and let go of and made new, right? And so we want to help it get the stuff from the back, from the subconscious mind to the front, right? Using these tools is very helpful because it just puts the survival system on chill. Hey, let's just let this happen. And the next thing you know, there's a lot of movement. Okay. And so when this happens, right, this now the subconscious mind got its issue resolved, your body got the issue resolved, your survival systems is with the program now and has a new program running. Now all of a sudden there's your whole system is able to refocus on it has a new subconscious program, new programs running that create more peace, more function. And and this function allows for more of your authentic joy and gratitude to start flowing. And gratitude is just a natural function of wellness. I don't make people do that because when it starts happening, I know we're winning. I know that because that stuff is natural to who we are. If we can do that, if we can be calm and safe and feel uh, look around at what we actually have, all of a sudden there's joy and gratitude. When we're looking at what we don't have, when we look at what is problems, that is a brain function because that's how your brain grabs things up to move through the healing process to upgrade it. Right. So, and we want it to do that. We want it to say, hey, I keep running over this couch that's in my way. We want your brain to say, we should solve that problem. Why don't we move the couch over to here? And now it moves over there. And now you're like, I can walk in my house without thinking about that. Right. We don't want that process to stop. But what happens with symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, it finds a problem, but it can't make it through the healing process. So it just keeps focusing on it because it can't solve it. It's like, I'm trying to solve it, but I can't. And it will stay on repeat for a freaking lifetime. This is why sometimes you're having conversations that you're replaying that happened 20 years ago. You're still working on it because that hasn't made it through the brain's healing process. And it's not going to let go of it. And you're going to notice it continuing to come up because it's like, I need to solve that. And it really does. Your brain really needs that. I could do a whole video on why your brain needs to be able to grab that thing through. It's so important to your brain function and to the elevation and expansion of your life. But if it can't, it will stay focused on there. And then you feel negative. You're like, why am I always focused on the negative? Well, you're caught in a brain function process that's malfunctioning and it's not completing the process. It's that simple. And because it's that simple, when we use these interventions to go there to that thing that it's focusing on and use an intervention like emotional freedom techniques, thought field therapy, EMDR, energy medicine, and we're doing this, finally it will come through in a matter of minutes. And when I say minutes, sometimes if it's very simple, it'll be 2 to 3 minutes. Sometimes if it's complex, it'll be 20 to 40 minutes. If it's really extra complex, it'll be, an hour or two, right? Brains do this stuff quickly. But if it can't do that, it won't. So hear me tell you that when this stuff resolves, right? When that is not latched onto that anymore, and I this is one of the signs I'm looking for when I'm using an intervention. I have people focus where they want to focus, their negative thing, and I have them use the interventions there. And I'm looking for the intensity of this distress that this causes to reduce, and then I'm going to watch for the brain to release it and move on to the next one. Well, let me tell you about this now. And it looks like they're just continuing to complain, but really what has happened was the brain said, okay, I got enough of that. Let me go to my next problem that I want to solve. Right? And the fact that it said, I got enough of that and let me go to my next one, that project is completed for now. And it might be completed entirely. To get the brain to let go of something, if you've ever perseverated on anything, and perseverated by, I mean, focused on it over and over and over and over and over again, illogically, and it's all you can talk about, all you can think about. The fact of letting go of something and being able to think a new thought is a really big deal. And on a brain function level, that's a really big deal. That we look over and we discount because, but now I'm on to something else negative. Yeah, let's go. Let's use another intervention. We're going to spray this whole thing down wherever your brain wants to go. And that's usually the first layer of work. That's usually how the first layer of work goes. And then we go to the next layer, and each layer kind of has a different feel to it. But so that's really, really important. And really, it feels really wonderful because then what happens is when your brain does its ping ponging around and we follow it around, right? That's kind of what the first layer is like. All of a sudden, it'll stop and then right here is where people will start to feel some of their first bursts of gratitude and joy after a long time, right? And then we're going to tap a lot there too because the brain's like, what's this? Change, right? Brains don't like change, even if they're good change. So we want to support the brain with that, right? And then pretty soon the brain will say, okay, that was awesome, but what about this? And it'll go back into problem hunting mode. And then it'll feel like I just went back into negative land again. But you keep going with this, and the next thing you know, that it opens up again into more gratitude and joy. And then you keep going, it goes back in because it's got a lot to, if you've got a whole anxiety, depression, and trauma disorder, it's got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of stuff that hasn't been able to make it through your brain's healing process for a long time, maybe since childhood, right? So we got work to do. This is why I have people use interventions for 2 hours a day. And that's one of my secrets to resolving disorders in 2 to 6 months instead of 2 to 6 years, because I actually train people how to do this work. And then I really set them to do it for realsies very intensively. And so that's not 2 hours at a time. That's throughout the day, supporting the brain, 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, things like that. But I'm going to tell you that if I've got somebody with symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, I am not sending them on a gratitude thing as a waste of their time. I am going to send them on a healing run, because once this stuff is cleaned up, all of a sudden, all of their joy will start expanding into their space. Done. Bam. Anyway, it really does happen like that. Sound effects are totally mine, but so that's not, don't expect that to be part of the process, but unless we're working together, because I absolutely reserve the right to say done, bam, at any time. Anyway, But having said that, that's just how the brain works. I um, um, I'm mentoring a therapist in my community, and this is what we were talking about, and she's great at this and getting better and better, and and she's telling me the same thing. I was like, I know, right? So this is a real thing. And I was telling her sometimes I'm just sitting there like doing nothing, and the brain is just that person's brain is just going and healing. And it's great. Like brains are amazing at this. And what's why you may not know that is because you're not working with this function. You're not working with your survival system. You're not working with you're not using the right strategies. And let me tell you, that brings me back. If you are having success with gratitude to resolve symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress, I'm willing to bet that you are using a mind body intervention along with it. Mind body interventions are how the survival system communicates directly. You can use any mind body intervention and you are in direct communication with your survival system. Now, are you communicating in a nice, positive way? I don't know. I can't assess that from here. But you are directly communicating with it. Anytime you're using your body, it is receiving messages of safety, of not safety, things like that. I like these other interventions because I know what kind of communication we're doing. But if you're doing a gratitude practice and you're waking up in the morning and you're jumping up and down like this, you know what? You're doing powerful brain work. You are working very powerfully with your survival system right there. Okay. And so there are lots of things that we're doing accidentally that we don't know that we're doing. That is actual brain work. And you are working powerfully with your survival system and you're creating healing. So all these mind body interventions really are the key into resolving this brain function problem because the brain can do the rest of it. It's just this one piece. And um, so that's a piece of this. Let me get back to my notes because I did write a whole thing here, so I didn't. Um, Okay, so you're hearing me that symptoms of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress, these are brain function challenges, not gratitude challenges. So gratitude is not the way in here. It is a brain function piece that when this brain function piece resolves, the gratitude will be able to flow. When you're having symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress, your survival system is sucking up all of your energy, electricity, and chemicals and juice to accomplish survival behaviors and behind survival strategies, right? If your thinking center is focused on the negative, it's you sucking up all the juice to try to do a healing function that is malfunctioning and is not completing in process, but it will not stop it. So your energy will go there. And all of that energy, we want to help the brain stop doing that so that you have this reservoir of energy that can be repurposed for your authentic self, right? And so we want to get all this survival energy, the survival system that's sucking up all this energy. We want it to not do that anymore. So we want to help it do the work of resolving those things so that it can encounter the things that were setting it off without going into a distressed state, not sucking up that energy anymore. And that means that there's more energy available to you. Now, when there's energy available to you and there's not all these problems and there's solving, all of a sudden that part of you that's very joyful will have energy to work with. And then she'll start throwing joy everywhere. The part of you that has gratitude, they will start gratituding everywhere because they will have the energy to. It's like hierarchy of needs, right? With survival needs must be met. And if your survival system's running around like crazy, the survival needs are not met. They could be, they should be, but there's a brain function problem blocking that. So because the old signals are still firing off, even though currently it's not happening anymore. So your joy and gratitude can't come when it's survival level distress. You're not running from the bully in the neighborhood and being joyful at the same time. That's not a thing if it's serious, right? And so once we resolve that one, then it comes to the next layer, right? The next needs. Joy comes in there. It's like we want to meet these bottom ones and the dysfunction so that you can function. And we always have to be good at working with dysfunction as well as we're good at working with function because what happens is when we start having dysfunction, then we can really use things like gratitude. And this is how we can make symptoms worse. We can use activities and practices like gratitude to suppress and to cover up the symptoms and to repress them, to push them down. Oh, we're not going to do that. Let's throw some gratitude on top. Gratitude, gratitude. Oh, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. Let's push all that stuff down. And that stuff pushed back down. That's like going over to your large intestine opening, we're going to call it that, and saying, nope, push that back in there. That gunk can't come out here, right? Your subconscious mind is bringing up all this stuff to go out, right? And if you say, no, 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 we're pushing that back in there, can't come out, you got a whole problem that is going to explode all over your life in time. Just like if you were to go to the large intestine and it starts to say, okay, we're going to get rid of this. The small intestine's like, put to the large intestine. If the large intestine says, no, 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 I don't want this stuff here, and pushes it back, you got a problem. And if we can see this happening in the natural physical world, it is no different emotionally and mentally. And if you're covering stuff with gratitude, this is bad. We need to be able to take this stuff out, take it to the dump. There's a brain dump in this. There's a little trash collector person in there. They're waiting for it to be able to move through and grab it, and it will get rid of stuff. I once helped somebody eliminate a phobia that they had had for over 40 years in 10 minutes. We actually we actually used emotional freedom techniques and some mental exposure therapy. Done. Something just because it's causing a lot of distress, even though that phobia was causing so much distress, so much hysteria, so much panic, even though it's so big, it was just a very small brain function challenge. And I find that it always is, even though it's complex, right? But if you can look at the whole thing and get in there into that one piece and resolve that, the whole thing changes. You do that a couple times, and the whole thing doesn't look as complicated anymore. Looks there's so much order in there. Your brain is constantly doing that. I could go on and on about that, but I think that you're hearing what I'm saying. Um, but if you're using gratitude as a suppression tactic, it's not going to work. Now, I will tell you, you can use gratitude to interrupt symptoms, and interrupting symptoms is not a bad thing. It's a great thing. It's a great skill to have. And then what you do from there, if you repress the material that was coming up and you push it back down, you're going to have a problem. But if you have the skills to take that stuff and pull it through, you are really winning. You have interrupted something and then you're healing. And that is simple. It's a very simple process. Um, and can be learned so quickly. I have a couple videos about that. One that's called the first skill to build. You'll have to look in my videos section, the first skill to build. And I did one recently about this as well. Now you make me want to look and see what that was called. Um, let's pretend that I can find it really quick because I can. One question that can help you determine where you are in your symptom elimination journey. And that one I did on just a couple days ago, June 10th, 2021, in case that happens. Um, okay, so those are places where I teach people how to do this work. Also, in my group called Women Releasing the Baggage of Anxiety, Depression, and Post-Traumatic Stress, PTSD. In there, I teach these interventions. I teach emotional freedom techniques. I teach the thought-filled therapy intervention I like the best. It's the first level of training. Um, and then I teach an energy routine that's very supportive to this whole process. And then I just did a training on an alternative use of EMDR that I have found to be safe for the majority of people, right? Where even people who cannot do EMDR for trauma processing find that this type of EMDR they can use and integrate and get a lot of benefit out of. So if you're looking just for an intervention to get started with, that's a place where you can find them and grab them up. That's really how I moved my anxiety and depression disorder into remission. I just had emotional freedom techniques and the ideas I shared in those videos. Okay. So I want to make that available to you. If you're somebody who is really in a position, I have a whole 8 part program where I walk people through doing this work for themselves, and that's available for self study. I also do this intensively in a coaching program where I provide intensive support. And so, but the entire premise of that is really great and works best for people who have the awareness already built in about their symptoms to a higher level, right? A moderate to high level. As long as you know this is a symptom and it hurts. If you can do that, really, my program is really one to look into because I will walk you step by step through the whole process. And if you want me to be right there with you to do that, we can talk about that too with the 8-week intensive. So all of that information you can find on the Facebook group, and my program Inner World Transformation is, you can find that on my website at rachelmcleod.com. And you really can grab this stuff up and really work powerfully with your brain, powerfully, and really eliminate symptoms. And when those symptoms are gone, the positive emotions have plenty of room. And if you have challenges with those, right, pick up a gratitude practice and use your intervention along the way, right? But it's really, gratitude is not something to be put on top of this stuff. Um, you don't want to put paint over garbage, and stuff that hasn't made it through the healing process is a lot. There's a lot of garbage in there, but there's also a lot of nuggets. There's a lot of powerful, important things in that area of your brain. I call that quarantine, long before COVID came along. Okay. But that's the part of the brain where your survival system says you can't touch this, you can't have any of these things in here, don't talk about them, don't look at them, you can't have any of that. So, but that's where the unresolved stuff goes, and there's a lot of garbage in there, but there's a lot of gems. And if you go pick some of that stuff up and manually walk your brain through its healing process, it will discard stuff, and then it will be like, "Oh my goodness, look at this." And the whole brain will be like, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome. We've been looking for that for a long time." And then they go and they build stuff with it. And then you go do it again. And the celebrations happen. And then you start showing up differently. And then you notice you're not as freaked out about that thing that used to be. Oh, that happened and you didn't even worry about it at all. Oh my gosh, you slept and you didn't wake up at night with a nightmare. This is what happens. It's what your brain's creating a way of being that's natural and functional to it. If there's dysfunction in your life, it's because your brain hasn't been able to do its function making process. And that's its job. And that's what it's really, really good at, is making function. So if you've got dysfunction, hear this. You don't have dysfunction because your brain is crap, okay? That all these other people's brain is awesome and your brain's just crap because, it's just, no, there's a reason and it can be resolved. And the reason might be that you have early childhood trauma or complex childhood trauma, and some of that function wasn't built when it was supposed to be built. All the equipment's there. Your brain is standing to wire it and assemble these functions for you at any time, but you have to do the work, right? And so I encourage you to get the tools, get the strategies to do the work, whether that's with me or with another therapist in your community, or my program Inner World Transformation, and you want to do it yourself, a self-study, you want a little bit of a guide, or you just want to try the tools. Get them. Start working with your brain powerfully. You're going to see massive transformation so quickly. Okay. So, all right. And Annie, I see you commenting over there. Awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you for the feedback. That was really helpful. And I'm not seeing any questions, so I think I'm going to jump off. But let me wrap up by saying this, that you have plenty of gratitude within you. You really do not need practices to bring them forward. If you've got symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, get those symptoms out of the way and watch what happens with your gratitude. Okay. I want that. I want your gratitude for you too. And you know what's interesting? I was thinking this morning, my business name is Goddess Recovery. And it's called Goddess Recovery because I'm like, there's a goddess in there. Let's go get her. Let's go recover her. She's buried under some trauma. Let's go find her. And I think that is really applicable to gratitude, that there's gratitude in there. Let's go get it. Let's recover it to its natural place, to where it should be sitting in your life. Maybe it's the crown on your head. Maybe I don't even know. I don't even know. But you see what I'm saying? Like this is supposed to be there. Where is it? Like where they get locked up? And it is within you somewhere. And that stuff's not meant to stay there. It's not meant to stay locked up. You're not meant to stay small. You're not meant to stay afraid. You're not meant to stay not sleeping. That stuff is not permanently broke. You're not meant to stay lonely. You're not meant to stay disconnected or dissociated. That's not how it's supposed to be. There's a reason that's happening. It's a brain function reason. It's not because you're not good enough. Let me tell you, symptoms of you're not good enough, um, feeling like it's all your fault, that's symptoms of post traumatic stress disorder. Post traumatic stress, we'll say. Okay. Um, and that's not supposed to be there. I know it feels native to you, it feels natural, it feels like a constant companion because you've had it since you were so young. I get that, but that's not what's actually supposed to be there. And your brain, if it would have been able to resolve that, then it would have. But it can now. And if it can't right now, this very second, there's a lot of work you can do to support it so that it can, and it will. So, all right, it was wonderful hanging out, spending time. I'll see you guys at my next video or in my Facebook group. And till we meet again, take care.